What if the biggest royal scandal of the decade wasn't about power, politics, or press, but about blood? The story doesn't start with sirens or front-page headlines. It begins quietly, almost like a rumor that shouldn't be true, except it is. And once it cracks through the surface, nothing in the monarchy looks the same again. Now, before we dive in, go ahead and hit subscribe if you're into deep dives like this, because this one gets wild, emotional, and honestly a little heartbreaking. And I'd love to hear what you think as we go. Drop your theories in the comments, because trust me, you're going to have them. Many people who follow the royals never saw this coming. Even insiders who usually know everything were caught off guard. The moment the truth surfaced, palace staff who'd been trained to stay calm under any circumstance suddenly looked like they'd just witnessed a ghost walk through the marble halls. Because according to leaked legal documents, a DNA test quietly confirmed that Prince William may have a daughter that no one, literally no one in the public, knew existed. 19 years old, hidden in plain sight. And the most devastating detail isn't even the revelation itself. It's how it reached the one person whose heart should have been protected above all others, Catherine, Princess of Wales. The news didn't come from William. It didn't come from palace officials. It didn't even come from family. It arrived through lawyers, cold, clinical, surgical. No explanation, no warning, no gentle conversation at home, just documentation. Imagine being Catherine in that moment, already drained, already fighting a private health battle that would later become public, ovarian cancer, and then suddenly blindsided by a secret that had lived inside the palace walls without her knowledge. No wonder she disappeared from royal duties. No wonder events were cancelled, appearances pulled, and the tabloids started asking where she'd gone. The world assumed illness alone, but now a different picture is forming, one where illness and heartbreak collided at the worst possible angle. And let's be honest, viewers always sense when something is off. Royal watchers online practically breathed fire trying to explain the silence, and suddenly everything made sense in a way no palace spokesperson ever dared acknowledge. So here's where things get messy, dramatic, and painfully human. According to leaks, the young woman, whose name remains sealed, came forward through her legal team, filing a private paternity case. Nobody expected the DNA results to escape the courtroom, but the moment they did, they spread faster than wildfire in July. Internal documents, private messages, legal filings, and at the center of it all, 99.9% matching DNA. Not speculative, not tabloid fiction, hard evidence. Let me pause for a second, because I'm curious. If this were your family, do you think you'd want the world to know, or would you prefer silence? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely fascinated by where people stand on this. Anyway, back to the storm. The mother, who once worked at St. Andrew's University, the same place where William and Catherine famously became a couple, reportedly had a brief relationship with William years before marriage. Nothing salacious, nothing dramatic, nothing paparazzi-worthy, just two people who connected for a short period, then went separate ways. And then she disappeared from the university quietly. No dramatic exit, no scandal, no gossip column, just gone. Looking back, that absence feels a little too convenient. Fast forward almost 2 decades, and now her daughter steps into the ring, not asking for titles, not asking for media spotlight, not asking for inheritance. She just wants recognition, which honestly makes the story both more believable and more heartbreaking. This isn't a villain story. It's not even a royal takedown story. It's a story about identity. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, chaos bordering on panic. King Charles reportedly erupted, that's the word insiders keep using, when he first saw the document, red-faced, shouting, hand slamming the table, not because he doubted the evidence, but because he understood exactly what it meant for the institution he just inherited. His first command, not to discuss the girl, not to determine the truth, not to support William or Kate, but to ensure this must never go public. Well, too late. The internet heard the whisper and turned it into a megaphone. Traditional media followed. Then TikTok exploded with side-by-side photos and generational hot takes, which should tell you everything about where real power lives now. And William, silent, painfully, noticeably silent. Not a denial, not a clarification, not even a vague palace line like sources close to the prince strongly dispute. Nothing. Which raises a question that viewers have been chewing on like gum stuck under a desk. Was he shocked by the news, or was he shocked that it finally slipped out? His silence actually made things worse, because silence creates imagination, and imagination is much more dramatic than truth. Commentators and former staffers suggested that William may have known about the girl years earlier. If that's true, then the scandal isn't the child, it's the secrecy. And secrecy is the royal family's oldest addiction. That's what cut Catherine so deeply, not that the child existed, but that her husband never told her, not even during cancer treatments when her body and spirit were already stretched thin. Friends say she didn't scream, didn't throw things, didn't storm out. She just went quiet, completely frozen, which honestly feels more devastating. While Palace PR scrambled to contain leaks, Kate retreated from public life entirely, cancelling events, ignoring calls, pulling back from meetings, not because she didn't care about duty, but because duty suddenly felt the thing destroying her. She turned to the only people she truly trusts, her mother, her sister, and her children, and shut out the rest. Honestly, who can blame her? And here's the tragic twist. Legally, nothing changes. The monarchy only recognizes legitimate children for succession. George is still the future king. No headlines can alter that. But morality and public perception are different battlefields entirely. The younger generation, especially Gen Z and millennials, don't care about constitutional nuance. They care about fairness, honesty, and emotional truth. Which is why hashtags calling for support for Kate blew up, while others called for transparency from William. I mean, go back and read the comment sections. People chose sides instantly. Then something happened no palace could control. The girl at the center of the storm began receiving interview offers. BBC, Netflix, not tabloids, not gossip shows, real platforms, platforms that build legacies, not scandals. If she speaks, and I think she eventually will, it could reshape everything the Crown has tried to protect since Diana's days. Speaking of Diana, you could feel her shadow in this story. People kept saying history was repeating itself, a woman mistreated, a royal secret buried, a palace that values image over compassion. That comparison isn't great for William. The palace finally issued a statement, but it was the coldest, driest, most sterile non-response ever written. Basically, we don't comment on unverified private matters, which fooled no one. Meanwhile, staff began deleting records, photos, names, digital trail scrubbing usually associated with political scandals, not royal ones. By then, it didn't matter. The truth had already escaped, and once truth breathes oxygen, it doesn't go back into the vault. Where does that leave things? William is under scrutiny. Catherine is quietly healing. The king is panicking behind closed doors, and a girl who never asked for any of this is suddenly holding a story the monarchy cannot afford to ignore. Here's the real question for viewers, and I genuinely want your answer. If the daughter goes public, should the palace acknowledge her or deny her? What would be more damaging? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the debate is honestly fascinating. And then there's the future, not the symbolic one, like flags and crowns, but the real one. The monarchy depends on public approval, and younger generations are openly questioning whether the institution should even exist.
The hidden daughter doesn't threaten George legally, but emotionally, culturally, symbolically, it could alter how the next generation views the crown. And that's the part the palace fears more than lineage charts. Because once the public loses the fairy tale, the magic disappears. So now we wait for a statement, for an interview, for the next leak, or maybe for the courage of a girl stepping out of the shadows and saying, "This is who I am, and this is where I come from." Whatever happens next, the monarchy won't return to the world it knew before this secret cracked open. Some truths were never meant to stay buried, and this one was destined to rise. Thanks for watching and hanging through this wild ride. If you made it to the end, you deserve a medal, or at least a snack. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me what part of this story shocked you the most. I'm genuinely curious. And as always, thank you for being here. Alright, let's keep peeling back the layers, because if you thought the story ended there, buckle up. It's only getting darker, more human, and more intense. The palace, of course, has its own rhythm. Behind those gilded walls, staff are trained for chaos, but nothing prepares anyone for a revelation that combines heartbreak, betrayal, and the sudden rewriting of personal history. Sources say the atmosphere inside was almost cinematic. Aides whispering in corridors, lawyers hustling between offices, and senior advisors pacing like storm clouds waiting to burst. Imagine the conversations that went on behind closed doors. Do we deny it? Someone must have asked. Do we silence her legally? And the unavoidable gnawing question, how much does William know, and when did he know it? Because let's face it, if the public finds out that the future king kept a secret like this, it's not just a scandal, it's a trust explosion. And trust, as we've learned time and time again with royals, is fragile. Even more gripping is the human story at the center. This young woman, still unnamed publicly, isn't some tabloid caricature. She's 19, navigating a world that suddenly shoved her into a spotlight she never asked for. She grew up without golden carriages or palatial gardens, yet overnight she's at the center of history. Imagine stepping into a life where your parent is the future king of England, and suddenly every camera, every headline, every social media post could be about you. It's almost unbearable to think about. And what about her mother? The woman who worked quietly at St. Andrews, whose life and past connections were never supposed to resurface, suddenly finds herself part of a story that could shake centuries-old traditions. But she didn't orchestrate this for revenge. She didn't leak anything. Her goal is simple: recognition for her child. And that quiet, fierce determination has the potential to topple a palace carefully built on image and discretion. Then there's Catherine. Kate's journey here is the emotional anchor of the whole saga. Already fighting a private battle with ovarian cancer, she's confronted with a hidden truth from her own husband. People close to her describe the impact as shattering. Not anger, not screams, but an all-encompassing heartbreak that froze her very being. Friends say she repeatedly asks herself one question: how can I trust someone who kept this from me? That question isn't just personal, it's existential. It forces her to reconsider not just her marriage, but the foundation of the life she's built within the monarchy. For months, insiders say she's retreated completely. Her mother, Carol, and sister, Pippa, have become her lifelines, protecting her from the press and guiding her through the emotional wreckage. And through it all, she's doing her best to shield her children from the storm, to preserve some sense of normalcy, even as her world collapses quietly behind palace walls. And what about William? His silence has been deafening. Known for composure and duty, he is now the eye of the storm, a figure of public scrutiny and private shame. Some insiders speculate he's wrestling with guilt, regret, and the impossible task of reconciling his public role with private failings. Others suggest that the knowledge of this daughter may have lingered with him for years, hidden in the shadows while the palace carefully managed appearances. Meanwhile, the legal machinery moves steadily forward. The young woman's team is meticulous. They're not chasing headlines or leverage, they're after truth, acknowledgement, and perhaps the faintest thread of justice in a system built to obscure it. That drive alone has transformed what could have been a private family matter into a national, even international fascination. Public reaction has been seismic. Social media erupted, with people rallying behind Kate and questioning the monarchy's secrecy. Hashtags exploded overnight. Younger audiences, in particular, began debating the very idea of legitimacy, fairness, and trust within a centuries-old institution. People aren't just entertained, they're enraged, empathetic, and impatient for accountability. And you can't ignore the broader implications. Legally, the line of succession may remain intact, George is still heir, but perception is different. Morality, fairness, and identity are no longer abstract, they're on full display. And in today's digital age, perception often overweighs protocol. The monarchy's carefully curated image, long maintained through silence and controlled messaging, is now unspooling before a global audience. Then there's the psychological weight on everyone involved. The palace may focus on containment, crisis management, and public messaging, but behind those doors, the emotional impact is profound. Kate grapples with heartbreak, William wrestles with secrecy and responsibility, the king contemplates the legacy of his reign, and the young woman, still unnamed, is coming to terms with her own identity in a world suddenly demanding she define herself publicly. It's almost Shakespearean in scale. Betrayal, hidden lineage, emotional turmoil, and the inevitable confrontation with truth. And unlike fiction, there's no script. Every reaction, every choice will ripple far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. So as we watch this unfold, one thing is clear. No matter how polished the monarchy's facade has been, some truths will not remain hidden. And when they rise, the world sees them all. The heartbreak, the courage, the human stakes behind the gilded doors. So I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in Kate's shoes? Would you stay and protect the monarchy, or step away to protect yourself? And for William, can public trust ever be rebuilt after something like this? Drop your thoughts below. I promise I'll read every single one. If you're still following, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss updates as this story develops. There's more coming, and it's only going to get more intense. Stay tuned, and as always, thank you for watching and being part of this discussion. It's a story that reminds us, all, even the most carefully guarded secrets, eventually find their way into the light.